Well, for well over 10 years, the Maruti Suzuki Swift has been the default choice for buyers in the premium hatchback category, and this car has sold well over 13 lakh units. And the Tata Bolt is the latest one to question its throne. So does the Bolt has what it takes to be the king of its class? There's only one way to find out, by doing a solid comparison over here. Well, while neither of these two cars offers you a big boot, it is the Swift which wins this round, simply because there's very minimal suspension intrusion into it, and it feels like a much more wider car at the back. Well, the Tata Bolt isn't very impressive in the luggage carrying capacity, and that's largely because of two facts. The first, of course, is that the loading lip is really very high, and if you do find space and manage to squeeze in that luggage, then there's a lot of suspension intrusion into the boot, which limits its carrying capacity. So while neither of these two cars is really impressive in the boot department, it is the Swift which wins this battle by a whisker. Well, here I am now inside the Suzuki Swift's cabin. Well, not only is the build quality and the plastics slightly better than the Bolt, it also is a much more practical place to be in. You of course get this big tray over here where you can keep your wallet, and you get a cup holder over here. You also get a tray right in front of the passenger where you can keep those toll receipts as well as some coins. And the best part is that the door bins are large enough to house those big 1-liter bottles from your home. Well, in terms of seat comfort, there's hardly any choice between the Tata Bolt and the Swift. Both these cars are excellent in terms of cushioning as well as overall support. And what that means is that whichever car you choose between these two, you won't be tired at the end of a long journey. Well, choosing between the front seats of the Swift and the Bolt is a really tough job, and that's largely because both these seats are really exceptional for support as well as cushioning. Well, the Bolt's equipment list is long and very impressive, and in fact, it is slightly ahead of the Swift in terms of usable equipment. Now, it doesn't have a start-stop system like the Swift does, but it offers you a much more practical and usable equipment in the form of GPS-enabled maps. But there is one area where it does fall slightly behind the Swift, and that is in practicality, and it doesn't offer as many storage places as the Swift does. There aren't any big door bins, and there's only one slot where you can keep that bottle, and it can't really hold that 1-liter bottle from your home. So that's one area where Tata Motors should seriously look at. Well, the Swift simply cannot touch the Tata Bolt when it comes to rear seat comfort, and that's largely because the seats offer much more space and room in them. As you can see, I've got a good amount of knee room, and headroom is pretty generous as well, and I have got place below the front seats where I can stretch my feet, and that makes it a much better car if you are someone who will enjoy being chauffeur driven. Well, also because the Bolt is much wider than the Swift at the back, what that means is that you can generally sit 3 over here for those long journeys. But just like the front seats, the back also is very bad for practicality, and Tata Motors should seriously consider adding pockets over here behind the front seats and also giving it larger door pockets. The current ones are simply not good enough to hold those big bottles in them. Well, even though the Swift offers decent headroom and just about adequate knee room, the backseat department clearly is an area where the Bolt excels at, and that's largely because it offers more space. Another area where the Swift is behind the Bolt is the fact that the floor panel on the Swift is not as flat as the one on the Bolt, and there's a bit of a hump over here, which means that legroom can be a bit of an issue for someone sitting in the middle. Well, here I am now driving the new Swift. This car of course comes with a 1.2 petrol as well as a 1.3 diesel engine, and both these engines are very good in terms of refinement, and even when you are revving both of them, including the diesel, they remain largely unobtrusive inside the cabin, and the cabin remains a very peaceful and quiet place. Where the Swift really excels, no matter which engine you choose, is in the gearbox department. It really is a very sweet gearbox, and if you really want to know the definition of slick, then this is the gearbox that you need to operate. It's efficient, it's really slick, and it's very precise. Well, another area where the Swift impresses is in its dynamic abilities. This is one of the most chuckable cars around. It's very easy to change directions in this car, and there's minimal body roll when you are pushing it into that corner. That, along with the crisp and engaging steering wheel, really makes it one of the better cars, if not the best car, for keen drivers. Well, where the Swift really excels and cannot be touched by any of its rivals is in the fun department. This is a fun car to drive. Well, the Swift has the edge over the Bolt in terms of engine refinement, and both the diesel as well as the petrol that we are driving today feel a lot more silent than the one on the Bolt. It's also a more engaging car to drive. The chassis feels more dynamic, and this car feels a lot more lively when you are pushing it into that corner. Well, one area where the Swift is slightly behind the Tata Bolt is in the ride comfort. The Bolt's ride is a lot more mature, and when you are doing high speeds, the Bolt feels a lot more reassuring to drive on that highway than the Swift does. Well, here we are now driving the new Tata Bolt, and this car, just like the Swift, comes with two engine options. There's a diesel as well as a petrol motor, and the petrol is the only car at this price point in the hatchback segment which comes with a turbocharger. Well, for this comparison, we are of course comparing the petrol motors of both these cars, and the Tata Bolt's petrol engine is very impressive in terms of the refinement department. Well, this is of course the only car in its segment to offer you three different driving modes. You can of course choose by clicking this button over here. You can choose the Eco mode, which basically means that the car delivers better fuel efficiency, or the Sports mode, which means that you get better performance. And the default mode, of course, is the City mode, where the car starts automatically every time you take it out for a spin. While dynamically the Tata Bolt isn't as adept as the Swift, this car doesn't feel as engaging to drive, and that's largely due to the fact that there's a lot of body roll. Well, the steering on the Tata Bolt is really light and easy to use, and what that means is that this is a nice car to punt around traffic and maneuver around those tight lanes. But what that lack of weight in the steering wheel also means is that it's not really a very engaging car to drive, and it's not very confidence inspiring when you are pushing it into that corner. Well, another area where the Bolt is very impressive is in the fact that it's a rock solid car when you are doing high speeds on the highway, and in fact this car can actually trump a lot of other expensive cars when it comes to high speed manners. And the ride quality on the Bolt really does show a lot of maturity about itself. It feels like a much bigger car when you are on the highway. Well, despite being a turbo unit, this petrol engine does not show any laziness even when you are at lower revs, and performance is more than adequate. In fact, performance is very, very sprightly. But if you want it to be even more livelier than it is, all you need to do is just go over here and press the Sport button. Well, even when you push this engine hard, noise levels are pretty low, and that makes the cabin a pretty peaceful and silent place to be in. Well, if I had to give these cars points out of 100, then the Tata Bolt would get 88 and the Maruti Suzuki Swift would score a 90. And that really goes to show you the amount of improvements and progress that Tata Motors have made over the years. And who knows, if they continue on the same path, the Tata Bolt might well win the next comparison with the class leader.